The stuff that James Gunn makes Michael Rooker do is crazy. I watched this episode and I was like, what the fuck? Welcome back, everyone. We're here to talk about Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4, Need I Say Door? Which, I love that when you say it, it just rhymes. So, fair warning, there will be spoilers in effect. We may have already indicated or hinted at some things in the intro of this video. So that's an indicator that we're going to get into it here, okay? This is probably the episode that has blown me away the most this season because it highlights why I really love this show. Before I get into why I really love this show, what I want to hear about is why you really love this show, or why maybe you don't like this show. If that's why you like watching reviews about it, which if that's what you're into, alrighty then. But you can let me know down in the comments sort of how you're feeling about the show and where you think we're going with the next episode, because I think we set up some pretty crazy stuff, especially when it comes to the truth behind what's happening in this reality that Chris has been sneaking off to. But we'll get to all of that as we discuss. I honestly want to do a whole theories video on this show before we get to the next episode, because I have some theories about some things that I think are going to be really crazy if I'm correct and if I'm suspecting the right stuff. Although, to be fair with Peacemaker, this is part of what I love about the show, is that even when I think I know where it's going, sometimes it zigs when I think it's gonna zag, you know? So before I tell you about my favorite scene, let me just give you a quick summary of this episode. This episode is a lot of setup for the next episode, which I think is going to be completely insane, but it's very important, especially for character development. We are starting with a flashback which explains where Chris's dad got the door technology from. He actually got it from an alien from another dimension. And then we jump into the episode where Peacemaker's home's about to be raided. Economos gives him a heads up. He manages to escape, and after a confrontation against Judo Master, makes his way to Adabio, who is driving him to Settlers Hill. There, they're able to take the tech that actually anchors the door to move the door before Economos can crack it. And while all of that is happening, we move over to Harcourt. Harcourt is being visited by Rick Flag Sr., who, after having Chris slip through his fingers yet again, is looking for someone who can help him to bring Chris in, and even promises Harcourt that if she can do this, he will basically overrule Amanda Waller's last decision before she left Argus to bring Harcourt back. And it seems that they have a pretty friendly relationship, as though Rick maybe knew that Chris and Harcourt were really good friends and kind of a bit of an item. Chris manages to anchor the door just in time, and afterwards reveals to Adabio everything that has been going on with him so far this season, including the fact that he took out another version of him from an alternate reality, and also revealing to her that he has this feeling that he's in the wrong place, that he's actually meant to be in this other reality where everything seems great. Adabio reassures him that he is exactly where he needs to be, and that he should be there with them, his friends. Or are they his friends? Because Harcourt seemingly agrees to take the deal from Rick Flag Sr. to bring in Peacemaker in exchange for getting her job back. She sends Chris some information. They're going to meet each other, and she tells Rick where they're going to be meeting so that they can basically ambush Peacemaker, saying that I'll distract him and then you guys come in and grab him. Then we move over to a very strange character, Red St. Wild, played by Michael Rooker, who has had a run-in earlier in this episode with Eagly and survived it, and now believes that Eagly is the primal eagle. And so he is using some kind of magic to track down Eagly, which seems to surprisingly work, considering how much appropriation this man seems to be doing. As Chris is heading to meet Harcourt, that's basically where we leave off the episode. It seems like a lot of people are going to be having a showdown in episode 5. So how did I feel about this episode? Well, like I said, I think this has been the strongest episode that we've had so far, because it really highlights a lot of the stuff that I really love about Peacemaker. I think that there's just not a lot of people maybe that know about this show, and a lot of people have ideas. And I remember this was season 1 when it came out. A lot of people had ideas about what this show was really about. And what I love about this show, well, the action is great and the superhero stuff is great, and there's a lot of larger than life moments, clearly. I think at its core, what I love about Peacemaker is the humanity of this series. because all of the problems that these characters deal with are really grounded in such a human experience. Like, for example, Chris wanting to go over to this other reality. Sure, I've never known that there was an alternate reality where everything seemingly was perfect, and maybe I thought I want to leave, my main reality to go there. That I've never done. But the idea of wanting something, the idea of the grass being greener on the other side, and you thinking that what you have now is not enough, being envious of what someone else has, or believing that you deserve more. These ideas, these concepts are not new. There are things that we see, that we feel every day. And what I love about this show is that season 1 and season 2 have both had such grounded problems in terms of what they actually mean for the person internally. A lot of these struggles are really internal, and they're just kind of set in a world where superheroes happen to exist. So that's what I really love about Peacemaker and where I think the show shines. And this episode is really focused on all of that. It's really focused a lot on the humanity of the characters. My favorite scene, actually, to talk about that, to get back to that, is the scene with Rick Flag Sr. and Harcourt. And what I love about that is there's so many little subtle moments that we get from Rick. We get this moment with Rick, where he's looking around at Harcourt's apartment, and he's clearly taking in that Harcourt is not doing well. She doesn't have a TV anymore. She has a mount where a TV used to be. He sees a picture of her with her friends, the 11th Street kids, and there's just this moment on his face that passes that's kind of like a wow, I can't believe what I'm really about to do. Like, he almost feels bad, it seems, but there is this desperation. He really wants to bring in the man. He really wants to, I think, hold someone responsible for his son's death, because the idea that he lost his son in the line of duty, I think, is just something that is really hard for Rick Flag Sr. to accept. That is the challenge here, and that Rick is going through, is kind of wrestling with this goal that he wants, that he thinks it'll make things better, but at the end of the day, it won't bring his son back. While Harcourt is really trying to figure out what's going on here, and she's so desperate to get her job back. Her job is so clearly has become entirely who she is. She doesn't know who she is without it, and it's driving her crazy to look in the mirror, I think, every day and not know what her purpose in life is anymore. That's been completely taken away from her, and she doesn't know how to get it back without her job. So there's just such a desperation with both of these characters. And layer on top of that, the fact that these two characters clearly have a bit of a personal relationship outside of this, because Harcourt had a relationship with Rick Jr. So that is also baked into it, and it just makes it's such an interesting scene. There's so many levels that these two actors get to play with, and I loved watching it. I also really love, there's a pretty funny moment in the show where Economos actually spits in Flurry's face after he calls him Ginger Cool one too many times. And just the tension between Economos and everyone in his team at Argus. He's trying to hold down the fort. He's trying to lie to everyone convincingly, and he's struggling so hard. But at the same time, it's very impressive. Economos does not get enough credit as a character. He says, I have a lot of social problems, but I also have a lot of skills. So it is your job to deal with this. That is the vibe. That is the vibe of Economos. And he also has a lot of heroic moments for someone who seems to not want to get involved in the action. You know what I mean? He literally saved Eagly's life in this episode. So we got to give him props for that. I really love the conversation that Peacemaker and Adabio also have. Chris and Adabio this episode. I just think it's such a, like I said, powerful conversation because it really speaks to a human experience. And I love how Adabio and Chris have just become such close friends. I love that Chris is just making more friends. And I also just love this idea of that doubt that everything around you is not how it's supposed to be, and you feel like there should be more. And yet, while Chris is going through all of this, and not to say that he doesn't have his stuff, but Adabio's really going through this season. Kia and her are split up. Her business is clearly not going well. She tells Chris, I got my ad placed in this magazine. And he's like, oh, that magazine's a scam. Like, they sell 12 of them. No one hires mercenaries from that magazine, Pro Weapons or whatever it's called. So ridiculous. And so Adabio's like business is struggling. Her love life is struggling. And yet she is the one that is like, look, like life isn't that bad. Actually, it's pretty great. So her optimism with his pessimism when she's really, really going through the ringer, I don't know. I just love their relationship. I think it's one of the cutest relationships in the entire show. And you know me, I love Adabio. I just think she's a great character. The thing that's really great about this show too is that it's not just about, everything that people say. What I love about the scenes, what I love about the writing is it's almost as much about what people don't say as it is about what people say in a scene. What people are afraid, characters are afraid to say, or what they're holding back. Or oftentimes the physicality of a scene. There's a lot that actors say without saying a word, just with their facial expressions, their reactions, their eyes. And you see a lot of that ring true with Peacemaker. It understands the power of filmmaking in terms of storytelling. It's not afraid to show us as opposed to just tell us everything. Although something that they reiterated that I thought was interesting is Chris, when he's talking to Adabio, talks about how he came to this dimension and explaining it to her. And he reiterates that Eagly is the one that brought him there. And I think that's going to be an important detail, and it relates to a theory I have about how Eagly actually might not be from the main dimension. And maybe that's why. Maybe he's from that other reality. We'll get into it more in the theories video, but yeah, I think it's interesting that it was reiterated. I love James Gunn's writing because I always feel like I have to pay attention to stuff because it's important. Everything is important, and I love that. I can't wait for us to get back to the owls. That's definitely coming back, guys. If the owls don't come back, I'll eat my hat. Really, what this season seems to be about is this idea of the cost of fantasy. Everyone has something that they want this season that they are working to get towards no matter what, and that they are kind of giving up things that they already have in order to get it. Harcourt wants her job back, and she's willing to sell out Chris, seemingly. I don't think she is actually going to sell out Chris. I'm just going to say it. I think there's more to that text conversation than what we saw, and that there is a plan in place where she's going to try to protect Chris. But I don't know. She really does want her job. So I could be wrong about that. I like to think I know what type of person Harcourt is, but I'm totally prepared to be surprised because she really is broken without her job. Maybe she'll be willing to sell him out, and she might change her mind in the process of talking to Chris. We'll have to see. We have Chris, who wants, an ideal reality where everything is great for him. He wants his family to be back together and to love each other and to be a good, healthy family. He wants to be with Harcourt. He wants all of these things, and he's willing to give up his entire reality, his entire world to get that. Adabio's willing to give up her marriage to pursue her career. It's all of these characters seem to have something that there's something that they really just want, a fantasy in their mind that they want to live in. And it's really about what you're willing to give up. The idea of, where does happiness come from? Does it come from this idea of escape, of the things that we could have, and once we have those things, we'll be happy? Or does it come from a place of presence? Does it come from a place of really fully being in tune with where you are in the world and what you have now and being at peace with it? Peacemaker. So that's what I love about this episode. It kind of highlights just all of the strengths of this show. We do get a little bit of fighting in it. I mean, the fight with Peacemaker and Judo Master, like down a hill in the woods, was pretty crazy. The fight that we even see a little bit of with Harcourt, where she's fighting that guy, is, I would say, exactly how you should use slow-mo in a fight if you're going to use it. Oh my goodness. We saw Red Sonja the other night, and that is a movie that uses slow-mo in action in a terrible way. But, there are times and places for it to add emphasis. And I will say that the fighting, when we do get a lot of fighting in the show, is peak. And even when we only get a few moments, it's still great. And of course, we need to talk about this. I alluded to it at the beginning, but I think one of my favorite weird things about this show is Michael Rooker playing this really terrible man, Red Saint Wild, who I think at one point Economos just calls cultural appropriation guy or something in this episode. And it's so true. He's just such a villain. He just wants to take out these eagles for No reason. Like Economos says, you're just coming up with stuff to like justify what you want to do, aren't you? However, he does seem to have mystical powers. So what's that about? All I know is that when this guy gets his comeuppance, it's going to be crazy. And the fact that Michael Rooker was not the first pick, but the first pick fell through. And so James Gunn had to call him up to be kind of like ask him for a favor to be in this show. And Rooker agreed to do it, including this crazy dance he does around the fire. Apparently on the podcast, they talked about how Rooker had to do that for like at least an hour or something, just dancing around this fire to get all these shots. And I just think it's so ridiculous. I love how James Gunn is able to talk Rooker into doing these crazy things. Being Yondu, being this awful man in Peacemaker, it's really, really fun. He's really funny, Michael Rooker. And so it's kind of a delight to watch him in these productions. And I think another testament to Peacemaker is just, it's such a fun show. Like, legitimately, everyone has such a great time on this set. And that is something that I love about it. That is something that I love about the show. And you get it. If you watch the podcast, you really do get those vibes that everyone is just having such a great time making it. And it shows. It's a fun show to watch because people had fun making it. Episode 5 is probably going to be nuts. Everyone seems to be heading towards some kind of big confrontation. Eagly is clearly going to have another showdown with Sam Wild. Peacemaker is going to have to confront all of Argus. Clearly, Harcourt's trying to lure him into a trap. We're going to have to see how that goes. It's going to be madness. So get ready because episode 5 will ramp up, and stay tuned because I'll have a theory video for you, hopefully before the next episode. Fingers crossed. Thank you so much for watching this video, and let me know your thoughts on Peacemaker down in the comments below. How do you think it's going to go down in the next episode? You know, do you think that Harcourt is selling Chris out? Do you think that there's more to this plan than what we see? Do you think Peacemaker will be captured by Argus, or will he get away again? Let me know. I'll see you down there. And until next time, friends, as always, stay nerdy. Bye. And just a little shout out, of course, to honorable mention to Vigilante. We had Adrian Chase in this episode again. And there's a little moment where he just gives this little smiley face when they get to Settlers Hill. And it's Freddie Stroma as Vigilante has the best reactions this season. And it's amazing. And if you like DC stuff, make sure you click here.